Yeah, welcome to another short video on Performance Navigator. In this video, we're going to talk about the installation and update of the AIX and or Linux host code. If you refer to the Performance Navigator installation for the Windows video, you'll notice that we will use the same Windows GUI for both IBMI and AIX and or Linux. Again, just as a reminder, Performance Navigator, the purpose of it is to manage the entire hardware, power hardware. So regardless of the operating system that you run on. By the way, that also includes any BIOS service you might have. So you're looking at the same Windows GUI, and if you wanted to install the host code for an AIX partition, you could go to File and install PN Unix. We say Unix obviously because it's AIX and BIOS or any kind of Linux, whether that's Red Hat or SUSE or Ubuntu or whatever, right? So just like the IBMI, this will prompt you to download another file. In this case, it is a file called powernav.tar.gz. Now you'll be downloading this to your Windows PC or wherever the Windows GUI is. And it's instructing you here to FTP or secure FTP if needed and we by default just recommend you go to /temp on your AIX or Linux system, and you will then be certainly unzip it. You gun zip and with the powernav.tar.gz. You can use then you're going to untar it with tar, extract, verify the file, and then you're going to run this install script. So I've already done this. Now I've used, in my case, I use WinSCP or whatever file transfer you want to get it up to your system. So I'm going to switch over to my AIX system, and you can see I have already updated, unzipped the file called powernav.tar.gz. Now, when you unzip that, you'll also get this install program as well. And that's what you're going to run, right? So you would just do, in this case, /install.sh. Now, it's similar the way we manage the historical collection of NMON in this case. You might remember from IBMI, we're using collection services. With AIX or Linux, we're using NMON. And you can see that the way we do that is similar to the IBMI, and that's using a job scheduler. In this case, we're going to use the root cron tab. So I'm already logged in as root, and so I will show you exactly what we add to the root cron tab. And you can see here, this is actually what we've added here. Program here, which is CE&D, which is consolidate existing NMON data, is what that stands for. And by default, you can see the directory. So when you install Performance Navigator on your AIX or Linux system, we are going to install it by default into a directory called user local MPG. Technically, you can install this anywhere you want, but 99% of the people just install it by the default directory. That program you can see runs like 4:25 in the morning. So basically what it does is it takes the existing yesterday's NMON file, which we started, by the way. So we will start NMON in that same directory, and I'll show you that in a second. And add it, consolidate it to a single file that, and I will show you those file names here in the next session here, the next screen or so. And that this really takes just a minute or two to do this, right? And then about 10 minutes later, we run this little job called PNDMC. And this has to do with potentially cleaning up that consolidated file from a space point of view. So just like on IBMI, the goal here is to have a lot of historical data, except not take up a lot of space. As a matter of fact, when you install Power Navigator or Performance Navigator for AIX on your AIX, Linux, or BIOS system, we actually check what's the free space in the /user file system. And if it's less than 3 gig, we actually make sure you attempt to add enough space to make it 3 gigs. I'm going to say most of the time that works. I rarely see a time when people don't have enough, space to add that 3 gigs. So you just want to make sure, and that's probably enough to even last for years. So again, it's very small, and I'll show you how we actually manage, that historical data without consuming a lot of disk space. But that job right there, PNDMC, is one of the things that cleans the data up. Basically, the more than 50% of the space consumed by NMON is with disk data. There's a lot of disk data. And for that reason, and there's another topic we call top, which has to do with your top processes. So this is sort of like, keeping track of who's consuming the machine, so forth. So we only keep that data for 90 days, whereas from us, all the other metrics like CPU and network and those kind of things, we keep for a year in this single file. And we'll show you what that file is in a moment. And then next we run a job called rack data, and this basically creates a file that gives us the current rack configuration. And then a little bit later, basically you can see once a month, we actually run a program called PND check, and that makes sure that the systems, the consolidated file is in order. Now, the next job you'll see there is called PN Get Info. So this job does several things. One of the things, it does create a single file that has all the data that you will need to view it in your client. So every night we update a single file that if you were to send it to us or your business partner or somebody to do an analysis, all the data needed to look at your system or that LPAR is in that single zip file. So that's one of the things it does. This file also automatically transfer the files needed for this Windows program to a drive anywhere that's mappable. So, for example, if you had 100 AIX partitions, we would recommend that you transfer all these files to a single place that's mappable. For example, like your NEM server, and map a drive to your partitions, and we will automatically transfer that. So once you connect your VM to this data, you won't ever have to worry about it because it's always updated. So this job actually does several things, and it might run 2 or 3 minutes depending on the data that you're doing. So that is what happens on your cron tab. So that's really how we manage the historical collection. But to see what happens on your system, this is all the programs and scripts in the system. Now you can see here, this is the daily NMON. This is today. Now, one of the ways, again, we manage this is after we consolidate it, we actually GZ and we keep the last 7 days of NMON. After 7 days, we automatically delete it because we do have the historical data already kept. And that historical data is in these files called MPG data 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this it dot the host name. So this MPG data 2, in this case .rocky, is the consolidated historical data, and like I mentioned before, it will have up to a year's worth of data, except for disk and top data, and that would be like 90 days. Now, there's some other files that we create here now in my directory because this is our development machine. We probably have more test files than you might see. But there's the MPG data 3 has to do with top data. And again, keeping track of who's consuming the system from an application standpoint. And then you have MPG Data 4, which happens to do like with file systems, and MPG Data 5 has to do with more details on your top system. Now, the other file you'll notice, you remember in the cron tab was rack data, and you'll notice that we create this file, which has the current hardware information in it. So in order to connect your system or the Windows GUI to this data, all you really need is rack data and MPG data 2. Those two files. Now there are some links in the Windows GUI for that would access MPG data 3, 4, and 5, but technically, in order to connect this LPAR to your GUI, you only need those two files. If you were to transfer them individually, right? So you could actually do that. But as I mentioned, we actually create every night a file that called pninfo.hostname.aix.tar.gz. This is the Linux system; it would say Linux, and we automatically update that. Now, in my case, what I did is I just used a WinSCP program, and I just downloaded that file to this PC so I can connect it and unzip it. So let me show you where that is. I'll just keep this window open here, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to show you what I did with it. So I uploaded it and I put it in my E drive just because that's had more space over here. And there you can see that is the file that I used to upload. I downloaded that from the Windows GUI, then I uploaded it to /temp and unzipped it and untarred it. Now, once I went to grab this file, I actually grabbed pninfo rocky aix.tar.gz, and then I unzipped it, and here's all the files. So you can see that file does have MPG data 2, 3, 4, and 5, and rack data. So now all I have to do if I want to connect to this system is come over here and say File, New AIX System. Now I could have all of my AIX data in one directory, which actually would be easy because remember that we have the host name as part of the file name, so you could actually put all of 100 AIX systems in the same directory if you want. So this is what this system is. If you just wanted to connect to one, you just uncheck that box. So in this case, I'm just going to browse. And by the way, we're going to remember this. And so I'm going to go to NMON data, and I'm going to go to my system here. And you'll notice that in this case, there's something called current and last 60. This has to do with some services that we provide, like capacity planning and so forth. In your case, as a customer, you are going to connect to, let's say you can take in last 60, or you're going to connect to MPG data 2.rocky. In this case, because it's data that we typically use for services, we only consolidate the last 60 days here, but that's good enough. So just highlight that and just say open, and it will look for that other system. And it says, do you want to contact it? There's a feature within Performance Navigator. So you'll notice because I had the box checked that says connect, browse and connect all, it's now asking me for a group name. So I could say Fortra, and this is another way to manage a lot of AIX partitions, right? Because a lot of customers with AIX have a lot more partitions typically than the IBMI customers. So you can see here that we've now connected to that system. And you'll notice that when we connect, you'll notice that this is now green. So by default, IBMI is blue, AIX is green. If you connected to a Linux partition, it would be black by default. You could certainly change those colors. But now you can see the last 60 days of data. Now, again, if you had MPG data 2.rocky, it would have up to a year's worth of data here. Now, you'll notice that it also changes the name from Performance Navigator to Power Navigator. And even though the menus are slightly different, but so like, for example, we've combined the graph and reports menu. But basically it's the same. You're going to see CPU, and we actually do GPUs. If you had an AC 922 or an IC 922 that has a NVIDIA chip in it or card in it, but memory and disk, and of course, because it's an AIX or Unix system, we track file systems and so forth and processes in network. So basic menus do change, but the basic data about CPU, disk, and so forth, and of course, we do track your top records. So that's how we can install it and connect the client. And look forward to the next session.